Why is the ceasefire in Gaza important to the Americans? What is the connection between China and peace in the Middle East? Will the ceasefire in Gaza hold? Why is Hamas's game so dangerous? What are the chances that Hamas will truly agree to disarm? And can peace with the Palestinians be achieved, or is it all an illusion? I'm Shoshani with a special boots on the ground live report, bringing you answers to the hottest questions about what's happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East. And I'm here to bring you the whole truth about the balance of power in Israel and the Middle East. Just before we start, click the subscribe button and let's begin breaking the truth into pieces. So here's the big question. Today, with the help of Qatar and Turkey, the pillars of the ceasefire agreement with Trump, is Hamas likely to find ways to prolong the disarmament process and create the appearance of compliance while maintaining its status in Palestinian society? U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and envoys Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff were all sent by President Donald Trump to Israel to advance the implementation of the American peace plan to disarm Hamas. However, Hamas vehemently opposes the move and is exploiting the ceasefire period to rebuild its military infrastructure and settle scores with armed clans that opposed its rule and cooperated with the state or the IDF forces. On the ground in the Gaza Strip, we see the Hamas terrorist organization stalling for time once more. We can all recognize that this is Hamas's dangerous game. All the manipulations and delays by the terrorist organization are all meant to buy time, to divide its enemies, and to derail Gaza's path to peace and a sustainable future. And on the other hand, we see the need of the United States, which is putting campaigns and all its manpower, from the president to top military brass, investing tremendous time and effort to ensure the Gaza ceasefire holds and holds for a long period. This all still raises the eternal question: can peace with the Palestinians be achieved, or is it all one big illusion? So once again, a new poll reveals that the October 7th massacre is still seen by most Palestinians not as a tragedy, but as a decisive victory. So before we dive into all the details and answer these complex questions, this is Mati Shoshani in a special live broadcast of Boots on the Ground, bringing you the whole truth about what God is doing in the Middle East. And together, we'll lay out the balance of power between Israel and its neighbors in the most unique neighborhood in the world, the Middle East. Just before we start, guys, I'm calling on you to keep spreading the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Leave a comment, tell us what you'd like to know, and most importantly, don't forget to click the subscribe button so you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Let's begin with what's happening right now with the ceasefire. After weeks of foot dragging and systematic disruption of the ceasefire agreement, whether by repeatedly and absurdly using the release and search of fallen hostages, in air quotes, or by sending terrorists towards the yellow line at IDF forces, or the whole story with the 200 terrorists trapped under Rafah who've already attacked IDF forces several different times, so that IDF soldiers fell during the ceasefire, it is now absolutely clear that Hamas intends to cling to power in the Gaza Strip at any cost. Its largest maneuvers are not the signs of a group preparing to disarm or to surrender, but of a terrorist organization determined to preserve its rule through chaos, deception, and bloodshed. Images of Gazans being beaten and shot in the streets recall the same barbarity Hamas displayed in 2006 when it threw Fatah men off rooftops. Reports indicate that Hamas now wants to involve its longtime allies, Turkey and Qatar, in what it claims to be search for the remains of hostages. These supposedly humanitarian gestures are nothing but tactics designed to buy more time, to embarrass Israel, and to undermine the US-led coalition coalescing under President Donald Trump. Iran, as always, is the puppeteer behind the curtain, using Hamas to sabotage any chance for peace. And after being forced on October 9th to accept the peace framework, Hamas briefly pretended to cooperate and return 20 hostages alive. Now, it's holding back the bodies of several murdered Israelis, testing Israel's patience and exploiting its moral burden. Now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to ensure that every hostage, those alive or dead, returns. But Hamas continues to stall while relying on international hesitancy and division. And meanwhile, the Middle East stands at a crossroads. Either Hamas relinquishes control and allows the rebuilding of Gaza to begin under international oversight, or the entire peace process collapses. The path forward is clear. Israel has already fulfilled its part of the deal and released 2,000 prisoners, including 250 of the most severe terrorists. And now it's Hamas's turn. No serious government or donor nation will invest in rebuilding Gaza as long as Hamas continues to rule. Who will rebuild under the shadow of jihadist tyranny? The only way to restore life and hope in Gaza is to free it from Hamas's grip. And as history has shown, from the coalition in the Gulf War that expelled Saddam Hussein forces in 1991 to the international campaign that destroyed ISIS, evil regimes can be defeated when the free world stands united. And that moment has come once again. The coalition now forming, including Muslim countries aligned under the expanding Abraham Accords, has both the legitimacy and the responsibility to ensure Hamas's reign of terror finally ends. The free world now stands united, joined by moderate Muslim nations. This is the key. A coalition that can crush Hamas with its combined power. It must happen fast. Time is running out, and if Hamas succeeds in prolonging its deadly game, the fragile framework for peace could collapse overnight. Something the United States appears unwilling to accept. And all of that brings us to our next question. Will the Hamas terrorist organization truly agree to disarm? Hold that question in your mind for just a moment, and before we answer it, I'm calling on you to keep spreading the truth. Share and follow us, and most importantly, don't forget to click the subscribe button so you stay tuned into the truth in real time and never miss boots on the ground. Now, what if I told you you can invest in Israel's future while staying right on track with your own future? Let me introduce you to Wise Money Israel, a team of American and Israeli financial professionals I've personally known and trusted for many years. Their CEO and his family are longtime friends, and I trust them completely. This isn't about high-risk ventures or complicated investments. This is a practical, biblical way to stand with Israel by investing in Israeli stocks and bonds just like you would in the US. And in fact, it works just like your US-based brokerage or financial advisor. You're not on your own. Just give them a call and they'll walk you through everything, step by step. Believe me, clients from over 30 countries work with Wise Money Israel because they deliver the same professionalism, integrity, and personalized service you would expect from any US firm, with the added purpose of blessing Israel through your finances. So if you're already investing and you've ever thought, how can I put some of this to work for Israel? This is your opportunity. So go to wisemoneyisrael.com/TBN. Again, that's wisemoneyisrael.com/TBN and schedule your free consultation today. Again, wisemoneyisrael.com/TBN. Will Hamas terrorist organization truly agree to disarm? U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and envoys Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff were all sent by President Trump to Israel to advance the implementation of the American peace plan to disarm Hamas. Of course, Hamas vehemently opposes the move and is exploiting the ceasefire period to rebuild its military infrastructure and to settle scores with armed clans that opposed its rule and cooperated with Israel. Senior Israeli security officials in Jerusalem all doubt Washington's ability to enforce the disarmament clause despite President Trump's repeated declarations. They liken it to the American failure to disarm Hezbollah in Lebanon. 8 months have passed since a ceasefire agreement was reached there, and neither the US nor Israel has managed to implement UN Resolution 1701, calling for Hezbollah's disarmament by Lebanon's president, their government, and their army. that the Lebanese leadership has also failed to deliver. The Lebanese government did approve a military plan to disarm the Hezbollah terrorist organization, but the status quo on the ground remains unchanged. Hezbollah still possesses weapons and has begun producing them independently. In Gaza, Hamas remains sovereign, and no force inside the enclave is capable of stripping it of its weapons. Trump's peace plan seeks to achieve Hamas's disarmament through diplomatic dialogue and pressure from Arab states. Chief among them are Qatar and Turkey, leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood axis, who promised Trump they can deliver. Now, President Trump has so far partially implemented the first phase of this plan, releasing all the living hostages and some of the dead. And now, he seeks to move to the second phase, to focus on disarming Hamas, rebuilding the Strip, governance in post-war period, and expanding normalization between Israel and Arab Muslim states. During his recent meeting with Argentine President Javier Milei, Trump said, "If the Hamas organization do not disarm, we will force them to do so, and they know I mean it." However, he did not specify how this would be achieved. Senior diplomatic sources assess that Trump will avoid deploying American forces and will instead rely on the political leverage of Qatar and Turkey over Hamas, while pressing Muslim and non-Muslim states to establish an international armed force to oversee the disarmament process. Now, according to defense officials, the likelihood of Hamas disarming is very low. Several crucial questions remain unanswered. What happens if no compromise of disarmament is reached? Will Muslim, Arab, or other states be willing to use force against Hamas to enforce disarmament? Will President Trump give Israel a green light to forcibly disarm Hezbollah? Security officials assess that Hamas will try to evade the disarmament demand in several ways, preserving its DNA as a resistance movement. Dr. Ahmed Youssef, a senior Hamas figure and former advisor to Ismail Haniyeh, wrote an article in the East Jerusalem daily Al-Quds on October 20th that Hamas will not hand over its weapons before arrangements are reached that ensure the security of its leaders and fighters under a security mechanism that will hopefully be supervised by Arab and Islamic states that influenced Hamas to sign the American agreement, according to him. Now, according to him, disarmament will not be an immediate process, but a complex political and security track that may take a very long time, depending on the seriousness of international efforts, the progress of the peace process, and of course the formulation of a political solution that removes the causes of resistance and opens a horizon for hope for the Palestinian people. Youssef suggested learning lessons from Northern Ireland and the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, which ended violence between the Irish Republican Army, the IRA, and the British Army. After years of negotiations, a disarmament process was agreed on and began in 2005, without detailing whether the weapons were indeed handed over. He also proposed tasking the Palestinian Authority, the organization that has been leading the Palestinian people, with neutralizing Hamas's weapons under arrangements that preserve its national dignity, on the condition that Israel moves towards establishing an independent Palestinian state. Senior defense officials foresee several possible scenarios. Scenario A, which is the best case, is that Hamas will request a long-term ceasefire, a hudna in Arabic, lasting 3 to 5 years, without giving up its weapons. Now, in the meantime, it will rebuild its military infrastructure using dual-use materials like iron, cement, and other supplies entering the Strip for reconstruction. Scenario B is Hamas may superficially agree to hand over its heavy weapons to Egypt for safekeeping, while continuing to hold light weapons and secretly produce new armaments in its tunnels. Now, on October 25th, Khalil al-Khaya, the head of Hamas's negotiating team, said in an interview with Al Jazeera, "When the Israeli occupation ends, we will transfer our weapons to the Palestinian state." President Trump continues to issue confident statements that Hamas will be disarmed by consent or by force. However, according to senior Israeli security officials, Hamas is banking on prolonged negotiations and attempts to buy time. With Qatar and Turkey handling Trump, Hamas is expected to find ways to prolong the disarmament process and create the appearance of compliance while maintaining its status in Palestinian society. After Trump's term ends, we expect the group to renew overt military rearmament. And as security Israeli officials put it, only the IDF can truly disarm Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon. And here we reach the crucial equation. But before that, it's important you keep spreading the truth. Share and follow us, and most importantly, don't forget to click subscribe the button and stay tuned to the truth in real time. And now, we've reached the question we need to ask. Why is the ceasefire in Gaza so important to the Americans? And why will the IDF likely receive a free hand to enforce the ceasefire by force? And the answer, of course, is China. Yes, the country whose name Trump loves to say the most. While everyone is talking about the chances of the fragile ceasefire in Gaza for the Americans and for countries in Europe and the region, this is just the first domino in a far more ambitious global plan. This is a story of how the ceasefire in Gaza is the key to launching the Trump administration's flagship project, the IMEC trade corridor, a vast trade scheme that is, let's put it gently, meant to change the world. Now, for more than a decade, China has led one of the most ambitious projects the world has ever seen, building ports, railways, bridges, roads, and a host of other projects across the vast expanses between China and Europe, under the Belt and Road Initiative. Beijing is creating maritime and land routes that start in China and pass, among other places, through Indonesia, Malaysia, India, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Iran, Russia, and even Turkey. And in every country along the way, it cultivates trade ties and establishes transportation means to renew the days of the ancient Silk Road and paint all of Asia and Europe in Chinese red. This network of roads is designed to achieve one clear goal: control of the global economy. And for the Americans, who are deeply immersed in Afghanistan, Iraq, and domestic affairs, it took time to understand how much the Chinese plan threatens the global standing. Until the US woke up, Trump came to power, and it seemed America was back with a plan of its own. Washington's answer begins with the IMEC flagship project, an American-backed goods corridor that starts in India and moves all the way to the Middle East, to ports in the Emirates and Saudi Arabia. From there, it goes to the critical land segment, railways through the Saudi desert, Jordan, and Israel, and from there by ships to Europe, along the corridor, while also run communication cables and energy pipelines. Another advantage, bypassing the Suez Canal, a trade route badly hit in the past 2 years due to the Houthi threat from Yemen. A new Middle East in a new and wonderful American world. There was just one problem: Gaza. A month after the plan was presented, the war in Gaza broke out. Some believe that was no coincidence. The plan that pushed normalization between Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the Arab world got stuck, and the corridor cannot be established in the heart of a war zone. The ongoing fighting froze the project and prevented the most vital step for its operation: quiet on the front and peace in the air. Enter President Trump's 20-point plan to end the war in Gaza. For us Israelis, the standouts were the return of the hostages and the demilitarization of the Strip. For the Americans, that is only the beginning. This is where the two American plans, the local one for Gaza and the global one for IMEC, connect. The American vision is to turn Gaza itself into an integral part of the trade corridor, not an enclave dependent on aid, but a production hub and one of the ports along the route. When people are busy with industry, with trade, and connecting to the global economy, the allure of extremist ideologies fade. And from this, you can understand the heavy pressure from Washington on Jerusalem not to let the Gaza ceasefire collapse. For America, the dominoes are stability in Gaza, normalization with Saudi Arabia, implementation of the IMEC project. Or as Trump likes to call it, Gaza will become the Riviera of the Middle East. The US is pushing a range of countries to partner in the project, making them stakeholders in regional calm. India, seeking to compete with China as the Eastern trade giant. Saudi Arabia and the Emirates said to become the main land bridge receiving ships from India and benefiting from massive trade volumes. Qatar seeking to lead the diplomatic process and deliver quiet through deals. And of course, Turkey, which was originally left out of the corridor due to European reservations about dependence on Ankara. But the warm relations between President Trump and Erdogan could open the door for it. Over our heads, a great game of global influence and vast interest is being played. The engine behind the train of senior American officials arriving here. If this isn't the secret key to ceasefire in Gaza, it is certainly one of its significant components. IMEC is not just a one-time economic opportunity. It is a diplomatic engine that can stabilize relations between Israel and the moderate states. The ceasefire in the Strip isn't only about Gaza. It's about Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, India, and above all, about the competition between Washington and Beijing. That doesn't mean we won't see strikes in Gaza, Lebanon, and other hotspots. President Trump is careful to show he knows how to offer the carrot and wield the stick. And the stick in our reality is the Israel Defense Forces. The IDF is probably the most fearsome army in the Middle East right now. But it's important to remember, America's ultimate goal is not just keeping the South quiet, but to win the contest over who controls the New World Order. And so we all make sure to pray that in all of these struggles, we are all on the winning side. So pray for the people of Israel, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and don't forget to keep spreading the truth. Because thanks to you, we continue to produce content and bring you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel. Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org.